8 years ago, this country was enjoying its longest era of peace and prosperity under President Bill Clinton. Al Gore, his VP, and for all intents and purposes co-president, was running for president. He seemed sure to carry on Clinton's policies that made the country rise to such heights. Gore was a Vietnam veteran who had served 8 years in the House, 8 years in the Senate, and 8 years as VP. He had also been a crusading reporter uncovering corruption and was to become a Nobel laureate. His opponent, George W. Bush, was a failed businessman and failed freshman Texas governor, a former draft-dodging, duty-deserting, drug-dealing, drunk-driving playboy who was the son of a failed one-term president who had been handily defeated for re-election by Bill Clinton. Gore won the popular vote, but nevertheless the election was a close one and it all came down to Florida. Confusing ballots in one mostly Jewish district gave 15,000 votes to neo-Nazi Pat Buchanan, which even he said he didn't deserve. There were numerous other irregularities in the state, which was governed by W's brother Jeb. For example, African Americans on their way to the polls were detained by Jeb Bush's state troopers. Each recount brought Gore closer and closer to victory in Florida, which would assure victory in the Electoral College. W's margin was down to a few hundred votes. Then W, who said he is against frivolous lawsuits, sued Gore to stop the recount. A suit that he had no standing to bring, since this was a matter for the state of Florida to decide. Nevertheless, the majority of the Supreme Court ruled in Bush's favor in Bush versus Gore. Curiously, these 5 had always previously ruled in favor of states' rights, and they were appointed by Republicans, who always say they are in favor of states' rights. However, 2 of the Republicans who appointed them were W's Poppy and W's Poppy's boss, Ronald W. Reagan. The Florida Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, who was, of course, appointed by Jeb Bush, certified W as the winner in Florida, thus making him the winner of the Electoral College and the election. There was still one last hope for Gore. Several congressmen filed petitions to dispute the election results. These petitions needed a U.S. senator to sign off on them. Not one U.S. senator would do so, not even Al Gore's running mate, Senator Joseph Lieberman, who already had his sights set on 2004, a run which quickly went down in flames. Al Gore, as incumbent vice president, had to count the fraudulent votes himself. The inauguration of W was marked by egg throwers protesting his illegal appointment. The country went almost immediately into an economic downturn, and W seemed doomed to be a one-term loser like his Poppy. Then came 9/11. What was bad luck for the country, especially the 2,000 killed that day, was the luckiest thing that could have ever happened to W, although some people would argue that W made his own luck. The armed forces that had been recruited and trained by Bill Clinton made short work of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, although W subbed out the job of capturing Osama bin Laden to Afghan warlords who predictably botched the job. W, who had the support of the entire civilized world on his side, threw it all away to invade Iraq, which had been his goal all along. W claimed that Iraq's leader, Saddam Hussein, was involved in 9/11 and had weapons of mass destruction. Neither claim turned out to be true, but 5 years later Americans still believe them, even though W's administration has admitted that these were lies. The war was supposed to be quick and painless, for the Americans anyway, and the Iraqis were supposed to greet the liberating American army with flowers. A year and a half later, the occupation still continued and the Iraqis were throwing bombs, not flowers. To run against W in 2004, the opposition party nominated Senator John Kerry for president. Kerry had beaten out Vermont Governor Howard Dean in the primaries. Dean clearly would have been a better choice since he was against the Iraq War from the start, unlike Kerry and his running mate Senator John Edwards, who were for the war before they were against it. Incredibly, although W dodged the draft by leapfrogging over the people in front of him to get into the Air National Guard, from which he later deserted, he managed to paint Kerry, a decorated Vietnam War hero, as a coward. Kerry and his party did not fight back because they are pussies. In this election, W arguably won the popular vote, albeit by the downiest of cunt hairs. The winner of the electoral vote and thus the election hinged on another battleground state. This time it was Ohio, and although none of the Bush brothers happened to be governor, the state's voting machines were built by a Columbus-based company, Diebold, whose CEO, Wally Odell, had vowed to deliver the state to W. The voting machines were electronic and left no paper trail. The outcome was predictable. W was declared the winner of the state and therefore the election, although there were reliable reports of fraud, especially in African American districts. This time not even Kerry himself would sign off on an electoral challenge. He and Edwards both had their sights set on 2008. However, John Kerry's oral podiatric fixation took him out of the race before it even began, and Edwards, whose 2004 ticket had failed to carry a single southern state despite his Dixie bona fides, soon found himself in third place and eventually dropped out of the race. Going into the 2008 race, Hillary Clinton looked like the front runner. As Bill Clinton's First Lady, she was virtually another co-president, and has a record of public service dating back to the early 70s when she worked on the House Judiciary Committee, which was working to impeach Richard M. Nixon. Her main challenger was a freshman senator from Illinois, Barack Obama, who was inexperienced but managed to win a lot of votes and delegates with his youthful vigor, good looks, and a vague message about hope. Barack soon bested his other more qualified and experienced opponents like Bill Richardson, Joe Biden, and Chris Dodd, and it became a two-way race. Obama, however, came with serious baggage. One portmanteau was the totally untrue but astonishingly persistent rumor that he is a secret Muslim. His middle name is certainly no help since he was saddled with the moniker Hussein. The second piece of baggage is far too large for a carry-on. In fact, it is the size of a steamer trunk. It is the fact that he is a mulatto, and sadly it is questionable whether anyone of mixed race can be elected President of the United States, even in the 21st century. Returns in battleground states like Ohio, West Virginia, and Florida would seem to bear this out. However, Barack soldiered on with his campaign, gaining a thin margin of victory over Hillary in the popular vote and delegate count. Hillary has vowed to continue on. The campaign for the Republican nomination was quick and dirty, and the superannuated Senator John McCain emerged as the presumptive nominee. Now he has several months to campaign for the general election, while Barack and Hillary continue to tear each other apart like the gingham dog and the calico cat, wounding each other with charges that the Republicans will use against whomever is the eventual nominee. The fight is likely to continue all the way to a hotly contested convention, and the party may suffer a disastrous implosion on live national TV in full view of literally dozens of spectators. Meanwhile, the GOP is lined up behind McCain, who was not their first or even second choice. Even W., who in 2000 labeled his then rival, a former POW, as a coward. For his part, McCain has folded up like a $2 suitcase, reversing his position on several issues key to the Republicans. If the election were held today, either Barack or Hillary would be in a dead heat with McCain. Incredibly, since McCain has vowed to continue the disastrous foreign and domestic policies that have brought this country to wreck and ruin and made us the pariah and laughingstock of the world. That's some act, huh?
What do you call it?
The Democrats!